What's going on, folks? Eddie here. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So today we're going to be updating the 124 to have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now, this is not a feature that's built into the Fiat platform. It's not an update that is offered by Fiat. However, Mazda does offer this as an option. Oddly enough, the ND Miata has CarPlay as an option and an upgrade from the dealer. And fortunately, the cars being so similar, we can take the Mazda parts and put them in the Fiat and have Apple CarPlay. Now, there's a couple caveats to this that you should be aware of before starting. So the Mazda firmware, when you install it into a Fiat 124, after you've put in your new hardware, has the downside of the maps for the GPS not working anymore. Reason being is it's all VIN matched. After this update, it'll think it's a Mazda, while the rest of your car says, hey, I'm a Fiat. This also leads to another downside. When you first boot up the stereo, you're gonna have the Mazda logo. Now, if you do this correctly, you can fix that problem. But be aware that when you first do this, that will happen. So the first thing we're gonna do today, even if we're not gonna take care of getting rid of the logo today, I'm gonna show you how to preserve your ability to change the logo. Now, you're gonna need to check and make sure you have the correct firmware version. I'm gonna put a link in the description below as to how to do that. If you have an older Fiat and you've never updated the stereo or the dealership's never done the update, chances are you have an old one to begin with anyways. So we're gonna have to download a few things, and I'm gonna put the links to all of those in the description below. Most of them can be found by going through the 21st Century Fiat 124 Spider blog. I'll also put a link to that in the description below. Anyhow, so we're gonna start there. Before we go too far in this as well, I just want to say it's really important that you do not install your hardware kit before doing the software. This is the Apple CarPlay kit. It's really two pieces. We have a piece of hardware and we have the cables to connect it. This directly replaces the USB/SD card slot down in your middle center console. You're going to be physically removing that piece. The cables that are included are an addition to the system. We're going to end up having to take a couple cables and just tuck them away while these two replace that one cable. I ordered the kit from a Mazda dealer. It cost me just under $200 US to get everything I needed. Anyhow, once you get onto the page, you're gonna go to the tweaks menu and then select preserve your ability to do tweaks in the future. It'll bring you to a page that has some instructions on how to do this and a link to the files that you're gonna need. Go ahead and download those files and put them on your desktop. Now, if you don't have a really good pop-up blocker, you might find an additional pop-up comes up. Just make sure you close that. This is kind of the nature of certain file sharing sites. One thing you're gonna wanna be sure of is that the thumb drive is formatted as a FAT32 drive. Now, this is specified directly on those instructions. That's important as that's the file system that your car understands. Now, I'm using a Mac to do this, but reality is I formatted the SD cards on a PC in advance. They're all formatted to FAT32. Your Mac can by default format an extended FAT, and that might work, but I really didn't feel like finding out if that was the case. Anyhow, go ahead and copy those onto your USB drive. Now, while we're sitting at the computer, let's get the other files as well. The second part you're gonna need is the update for your CMU. Now, there's two files to this. There is the reinstall and the failsafe. You're gonna need both of them, and you're gonna put them both on the same USB drive. I would recommend using two USB drives for this. You can do the first part, preserving the tweaks, and then come back, wipe the drive, and put these files on if you'd like. But I'd recommend just using two different USB thumb drives. It's a little bit easier. After you've downloaded those files, go ahead and put them in the root directory of your USB drive. Now, when I say root directory, I mean the base directory. That means when you first open that USB thumb drive on your computer, it's there. Don't put it in a folder, just put those files directly in there. After you have your two USB drives prepared, go ahead and go out to your car. Now, the first thing I want you to do when you get out to your car is shut off Bluetooth on your phone. If you're like me, you probably have your phone paired to your car. After that, if you have navigation, go ahead and pull the SD card out. We need to make sure there's nothing connected for these processes. I don't actually know if it's that important for the first process, but I want to be sure that we don't run into any blockers as we're doing this. After you've removed your SD card and Bluetooth is off and there's nothing plugged in the USB ports, go ahead and turn on your car. Anytime I say turn on the car in this video, I mean one thing and one thing only. I mean, hit the power button once. Keep your foot off your brake. If it's a manual, keep your foot off the clutch and just hit that power button one time. That's enough to start up the CMU. So go ahead and turn the thing on. Now, after it boots up, go to your music. If you were playing music earlier in your car through USB or through Bluetooth, you might have the window pop up that's looking for its Bluetooth connection or looking for the previous audio source. Go ahead and just touch audio sources and select FM instead. Now go ahead, turn off the car. I would encourage letting it fully shut off. And in order to do this, what you're gonna do is you're gonna turn the car off, you're gonna get out of the car, close the door, lock it with your key fob, and walk away with your key fob for 3 minutes. After that 3 minutes is up, the car will be fully ready to go to the next step. Doing those 3 minutes allows time for the CMU to fully shut down. Once that's complete, go back to your car and put your Tweaks USB into the USB port. Once the USB is plugged into the port, go ahead and hit the power button, and the car will boot up and eventually bring you to the Tweaks menu. Go ahead and hit install. Let it run through. It won't take too long, and when it's done, shut your car off and unplug the USB thumb drive. Before we proceed, we want to do that same procedure we did before, the one that lets the CMU shut down all the way. So go ahead, make sure there's nothing plugged into the USB ports, lock your car and walk away for a few minutes, literally 3 minutes. Set a timer, that's what I did. When you're done, come back to your car and get it to the on position. Do not plug in the USB drive yet though, it's not needed quite yet. Go ahead and power on the car. Give it a minute after you see your CMU screen pop up. That's the one that has the music, phone, all the options. Once that's complete, we need to do a couple things just to make sure there are no faults in the system. We need to get into the diagnostics test screen. We're gonna use this a few times in this installation, and it's kind of a handy thing to know how to get into, really. I think it's kind of cool. Anyhow, so in order to get in there, what you need to do is you need to press the music button, the favorites button, and the volume button at the same time. Press and hold these buttons for 2 or 3 seconds, and the screen should come up. Once you're in there, you're gonna hit the number 3, you're gonna hit enter, and then clear. Once that's done, you're gonna hit the number 2, and then you're gonna hit enter, and then you're gonna hit clear. Simple. Once you've done that, turn the car off, get out, close the door, lock it, and walk away for a few minutes. Once again, we're gonna let the thing fully shut off. Once that's done, go back to the vehicle, hit the start button once. Again, that's without pressing the clutch or the brake pedal. And once it's fully booted up, go ahead and put in your USB drive. After you've done that, we're gonna do the same key combination. So we're gonna hold down music, favorites, and volume. Again, our test screen will pop up, but this time we're gonna press 99 and then hit enter. After that, a screen will pop up asking if you want to search. Go ahead and press search. The first package we're going to select is the failsafe. So go ahead and touch failsafe and then touch install. Now this one doesn't take all that long. Just wait it out. When it's completely done, just go ahead and hit OK. Now in between these steps, there's no need to shut things down. So now go ahead and press the clutch pedal in once. If you have an automatic, just touch the brake quickly. And then go ahead and do the same procedure. So we're gonna hold down music, favorites, and the volume button. We're gonna bring up our test screen again, and we're gonna hit 99 and hit enter again. It's gonna ask you to search again. Go ahead and search, and then it'll bring you up to the same options. This time, we're gonna use the reinstallation package though. So go ahead, select reinstallation package, and then go ahead and hit install. It's gonna warn you that it will need a restart afterwards. That's fine. Now, this install takes some more time. Some folks say don't get out of your car. I didn't really worry about that. The reason you're not supposed to get out of your car is essentially the system can possibly go to sleep if the installation takes too long, and you want to avoid that. Sleep time takes over 25 minutes. So all you need to do, once this installation is started and you can see the progress bar, just hit the clutch pedal once and then you can get out of your car and walk away. Leave the keys in the car. Don't take those with you, and just don't touch anything. Don't shut it off, do not interrupt it, let it go. Make sure you set a timer for about 20 minutes, that way you're under that 25-minute time to remind yourself to push the clutch in to keep the car awake. You only have to tap it once, and if it's an automatic, yes, I mean the brake pedal. When it's all done, go ahead and turn the ignition off. Now, there's a screen that's gonna pop up, and it's gonna ask you to restart the vehicle. Just ignore that. That's not what you're supposed to do. In fact, in the instructions, they actually have it crossed out and actually tell you to please not restart the vehicle. Once you've shut the vehicle off, again, get out of the vehicle, lock the vehicle, and walk away for 3 minutes with the key fob in your pocket. Okay, so the software's installed. Now all we need to do is get the hardware done. So we're gonna have to take quite a few panels out of the car to make this happen, but it's really not that bad. There's only 1 or 2 screws, it looks by the instructions. Most of it's clips. So the first thing we're going to do is take off the shift knob. After the shift knob's off, go ahead and reach underneath of the bezel around it and just pull. Now I know that sounds kind of scary, but you really just have to pull. The clips inside of it will pop right up and you'll be able to lift your shift boot and the surround off. Undo the 2 screws that are holding in the rest of the center console. Put those somewhere safe, you don't want to lose them. After that, pull out the button control for the CMU. Once that's complete, pull the front clip off of the e-brake handle and then lift the boot up slightly and you'll see a hook going into the leather. Undo that hook. Now the guide says to take this thing completely off. I'm going to say don't even bother. Next up, reach under the front of the center console and just pull out. There are a set of clips that'll just pop out. Reach to the back and do the same thing. You'll probably want to reposition yourself in the car to get those back ones. After that's done, just lift the center console up and over the e-brake handle. A little bit of finagling and it'll just pop straight over. So one thing in the instructions that they say to do is to take out the shift lever boot, which is this piece right here. Ignore that part. Don't take it out. There's absolutely no reason to take that off when you're doing this job. It'll just end up slipping out over the handle, and the piece of plastic at the very edge of it is actually really delicate. I actually snapped mine. It's easy enough to fix, but it's not something you really want to have to deal with. It's a bit of a... it's kind of stupid. So yeah, don't take that shift boot out. Next up, we need to actually pull the center section that has the part we're replacing in it. This part, again, just held on by clips. So reach in and pull. This unit's held on by 4 clips. I found it was easiest to take a Phillips screwdriver and push it in against those clips. Doing that, it took a matter of seconds to pop that thing out. At this point, you can go ahead and pop in your new one if you want. However, I'd recommend not doing that quite yet. It's easier to test to make sure everything is working when we're all done if you don't have that in there yet. Next up, we need to prepare the cables. There's 2 cables that came with this kit. They look really similar, but they're slightly different. I used 2 pieces of foam to wrap that wire, and my installation ended up being a little bit tight. There are some specific measurements in the instructions that I've linked. I would actually recommend following their suggestion on this part. After that's done, we can move on to taking apart the rest of the interior. So we'll go over to the passenger side. We're gonna pop off that side panel. It's just held on by clips. After that's out, pull out the rubber strip and then pop the panel out of the way. When the panel's out of the way, you're gonna see a 10mm bolt. Go ahead and undo that 10mm bolt. Once that's done, you're gonna pull out the pillar. It's easiest if you start at the top and pull down. I didn't undo the speaker, I just let this rest on my dashboard for the rest of the time. There is a small piece that is connected to the pillar and to the rest of the dash. The upper half of it has just this little red clip. If you pull out just that red clip, the rest of that will come out with the undersection of the dash. Next up, pull the trim out from around your climate controls. Reach with the screwdriver and unplug the actual clip that connects to the power button. Get this out of your way, and then you'll be able to undo the 2 screws on the side of your climate control system. Once that's done, undo the harness in the back, move it out of the way. Next, you're gonna wanna pop out the panel that has the vent. Go along the bottom and pop the clips with something with either a plastic spudger or a clip popping tool. Once that's done, there's another 10mm bolt. It's holding in your CMU. So take a 10mm on an extension and undo that 10mm bolt. Once that's removed, you're into the nerve-wracking delicate part. When you're pulling out the CMU, you're gonna find that on the left-hand side, there's a groove, and your cluster actually pops into that groove. So what you're gonna have to do when you pull this out is pop the cluster out somewhat. It doesn't have to come all the way out, just a little bit. That way you can negotiate the CMU out through. Putting your steering wheel down can help make it a little bit easier. I don't know if it actually helps, but I certainly found that it made it a bit easier. When the CMU is out, go ahead and unplug all the cables. The back right of the CMU has a gray plug in it, and it's beside an empty port. Those 2 ports are where your new cables are going to be running to. After the CMU is out, go ahead and put the cables in. What I did is I fed it all the way in through the passenger side of the dashboard, and then I fed it back underneath the metal bracket. It was a lot easier to get it in there, a lot more room to work, and it was a lot less frustrating than trying to just stuff it under the metal bracket. Once that's through, there is a tiny channel down the left side of inside the dashboard. You need to get the brown and black covered wires down through that channel, leaving the the two gray wires up top. Now, finding that channel to push them through can be a little bit frustrating, but it is there, you will find it, and it'll go through. Once it's through, go ahead and reach up and pull them down into the position you want them to be in for connecting up your brand new USB 3 port CMU connection thingy-mabob. There is a cable that matches the same end as those two new cables. Now that is the plug that goes into your old unit. What you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to fold that up, wrap it with some of the foam, and then put a zip tie around it. That's not going to be used anymore, and we want to make sure that nothing connects with it after everything's put together. So take care of that, and then we can move on to the top. The two cables are going to go to the far right of the CMU. So the green one goes into the very far right, and then the blue one goes in beside it. You're going to have a leftover gray clip, just like on the underside. We're going to do the exact same thing by wrapping it up in foam, and then just wrapping it with a zip tie. Go ahead and trim those ends of those zip ties if you want to be real tidy, and then we can start actually putting it back together. Before you get too far putting it all back together, I would get everything plugged in to the point where everything is hooked up, just so you can make sure that it works. We did this, and bang, CarPlay is up and running. After you know that it works, go ahead and put everything back together. So that's how you install CarPlay onto your Fiat 124 Spider. Right now I have the Mazda logo booting up, but next time I'll show you how to change the logo on that to be the Abarth logo, and then we will start looking at making the maps work. Herein lies the issue. When you do this modification, you're telling the car's CMU that it's a Mazda. So now you have a Mazda CMU operating inside of a Fiat. And the first thing you run into if you had the navigation and you put that SD card in is, you'll see that it doesn't detect it. It's the wrong maps. So let's say you go get the Mazda one and you plug that in. Okay, now you have a Mazda map in a Mazda CMU, but it's still gonna verify against the ECU. The correct way that everyone would be able to just do this and have it work would be to somehow get the CMU to thinking it's a Fiat again, and using the Fiat maps card. That'd be the easiest, and you'd have a working nav. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to tell the ECU instead that it's a Mazda. If we can do that, everything should just work so long as we use a Mazda SD card. Anyhow, we'll try that out next time. If you want to know more about my white 124 Spider, there's a series of videos right here. If you're new to the channel and want to see my old black 124 Spider, which had a bigger turbo and it was probably a bit more fun than this one is right now, there's a series of videos right here. And if you're into the Fiat 500, well, we're working on one of those too. You can check that thing out right here. Other than that, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you later.